Thank you. Good evening. This is Arthur Gasparo, Chair of the Nantucket Memorial Airport Commission. Welcome to the May 14th meeting. We'll start off with the public participation guidelines. We're using Zoom for this meeting, which allows the public to participate in the meeting as an attendee. The chair can request the members of the public provide their names for keeping accurate minutes of the meeting. Attendees must click the raise hand button if they wish to speak, and I will call on those that raise their hand in the order they were raised the best I can. And all questions should be directed through the chair. In accordance with Robert's Rules of Order, I would like to inform the public that comments will be limited to 3 minutes per speaker, and this ensures that everyone has an opportunity to express their thoughts within the allocated time frame and promotes an efficient and orderly meeting. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Ms. Topham?
Aye. Here.
Ms. Planzer?
Here.
Mr. Buscarin?
Here.
And Mr. Marks. The meeting is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless participation required by law. The meeting will feature public comment. We're convening by video conference via the Zoom app as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note the meeting is being recorded. All attendees are participating by video conference, and the folks may be able to see you. Take care not to screen share your computer. Before we turn to the first item on the agenda, I'll introduce each speaker on the agenda. If they conclude their remarks, we'll go through the line of members. For any response, please wait till they yield the floor to you. Please speak through the chair. Please take care to mute your microphone or computer when you're not speaking. And all votes in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. And with that, we'll move on to the first item on the agenda. Are there any questions, comments, or concerns with the agenda as posted?
No.
I'm hearing none. We'll consider that adopted by unanimous consent. Are there any questions, comments, or concerns with the draft minutes from April 9th? Hearing none, we'll consider those adopted by unanimous consent. We have to ratify the April 10th, May 1st, and May 8th warrants. Is there such a motion? And then we can have any discussion.
So moved.
Okay, second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion on the 3 warrants? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion. The motion's been made. Ms. Topham, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Planzer?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. And that'll bring us to public comment. Is there any public comment for the meeting tonight? I'm not seeing any hands raised. That'll take us on to pending leases, contracts set forth on Exhibit 1. And I'll turn it over. Ms. Perry, did you want to make a public comment?
I just was curious if there are questions later, if you would be taking those later.
We have a public comment at the end of the meeting as well.
Perfect. I just
So
wanted
we're
to
not
double
going to
check.
go item by item. So
That's
there is another
fabulous.
opportunity at the end of the meeting.
Thank you so much.
Certainly. Anybody else? Pending leases and contracts. Mr. Carberg.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Boyana. We have a number of airline leases. I'll go through them and then I'll circle back to one later item that was given as a handout. So we have an annual lease with JetBlue for $103,550 for terminal space. Again, the activity fees on our airline leases are remitted separately. I wanted to note that we did receive this administratively prior to the start of JetBlue's operation. We have an annual lease also with Cape Air for $105,158. Again, you can note the difference among the airlines. This is related to the use of space and volume of passengers. Cape Air retains a lot more local office space and counter space than other airlines do. We also have a counter freight agreement with Cape Air. There are no additional fees that we require as for that item. We have an annual lease for Delta with Delta Airlines for $37,929. We have a ground handling agreement with Ross Rectrix. They are the ground handler for JetBlue. That's subject to our $1,500 business fee. We have a catering agreement amendment with Island Kitchen. This changes our collections to be more in line with industry standards. Island Kitchen, the change should encompass, Island Kitchen billing their clients directly and then remitting the airport's 25% catering fee. We have a contract with Blown Away Heating and Cooling for a new water furnace compressor in the terminal for $23,000. And we have a contract with McFarland Johnson for $316,850 for continued environmental monitoring. The way I wanted to explain this item is that each of our capital programs requires ongoing ecological work for 3 to 5 years. Especially for a multi-year entitlement or discretionary grant, this exceeds the time frame of the FAA AIP grant. So the FAA and the airport solution is to gather all of these monitoring requirements for our different projects. So taxiway Echo, taxiway Golf, the South Ramp, and put it into a single grant. And this is the grant that's before you. And this is the approval item for the contract, but not the authorization item, which I have for you later in the agenda item as 7B in the agenda. So I'll call back to this. And then the addition that we have is a contract with T2 Systems Incorporated for $55,932. This is the 3-year contract for our parking lot operations software vendor. So this provides sort of the back-end database processing, revenue tracking, violation reports. That is for a 3-year time frame. That completes the exhibit, and I recommend your approval on all of these items.
Thank you, Mr. Carberg. Does anybody have any questions regarding the contracts and leases? Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second? Motion been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Topham,
Aye.
Ms. Planzer,
Aye.
Mr. Viscarin,
Aye.
Mr. Marks,
Aye.
the chair votes aye. Thank you. And that'll bring us on to pending matters. Update on the South Apron ramp expansion project, Mr. Carberg.
Okay. In the previous meeting, the commission directed the consultant to include additional alternative analyses for the noise barrier. This included reviewing an additional product similar to that offered by, I believe, Sound Defender is the firm's name. Reviewing if the wall can be used to dampen sound in addition to reflecting it, and developing design alternatives for how the wall terminates and constructability. One example of constructability is, could it be built by crane from the ramp instead of, for example, cutting down more trees to build the wall in that path. The engineer is now working on a design, bid, and construction management scope for the airport in the same way that we develop an engineering scope for any other civil or capital project. So again, the scope is the basis for the details in which the project is designed, bid, accepted, and payment made. As part of this, I believe Mr. Laston is obtaining bids from the subconsultants. There are at least 2 here. I believe Mr. Laston has one in hand from the acoustical consultant, which is HMMH, and he is working on receiving the bid for the scope from the subconsultant for the geotechnical work. Obviously, a 20-foot, possibly concrete noise wall is a significant structure. It needs to be appropriate for the soil, so it stays where it's designed to be. So this project may have to be designed, bid, as well as reviewed by Capcom, FinCom, and approved at the September special town meeting. Assuming good bids and that board approval, my goal is to try to construct in the spring of 2025. I've asked Mr. Lasden to be here, and he's available to answer any questions that you might have at this time.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for either Mr. Carberg or Mr. Lasden regarding the noise wall, the noise barrier scope?
Do we,
Mr. Marks?
yeah, just curious, do we have any preliminary sketches other than what we already have? Or any new information relative to that?
Mr. Chairman, if I may?
Yes, certainly, Mr. Lasden, please.
Yeah, Mr. Marks, no, we don't have anything. We did have a conversation with HMMH, who is the acoustical design firm, and discussed some options. There was the packet, the previous packet showed some options of what walls, typical highway noise walls might look like. And that's what they're using as their basis of design. But what they need to do is model aircraft noise, not car noise. So, you know, we talked about it a couple of commission meetings ago. Should we use, you know, canned model noise, aircraft noise versus actual noise at the airport? And so the decision, I believe, of the commission was to use sort of, you know, canned noise for each particular type of aircraft. So that's what they're going to do, is sort of find in their model to make sure that they have the appropriate engine thrust characteristics for the aircraft we have, so they can start modeling it.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Ms. Topham, go ahead.
Can you describe what canned noise is? How bad it will be or how good?
So it's just every engine and every aircraft has a different thrust characteristic that comes out of the back of the plane. And it makes noise depending on the engine type and the plane, and where the engines sit on the wings of each plane has a different profile. So it's sort of like the noise that your car has is different from every car you might drive, has a different noise profile.
Like a different muffler.
Exactly right.
Thank
So they have certain characteristics already in their software. And so they just have to make sure that they have the characteristics of the aircraft type that we want, so they can properly profile the characteristics that would be at your airport.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Anyone else? Mr. Lasden, I had two questions. Have you, I understand it might just be too preliminary, but is there any sense between the two products, or in terms of the Sound Fighter type of an approach versus the precast wall, that we might be heading in one direction or the other, or that's just going to have to be explored as part of the task order?
So interesting question. When I brought up sound absorption versus sound reflection, their initial sort of thought was that sound absorption really wouldn't help in your situation. And that sound reflection, which would sort of bounce the noise back onto the airfield, might be better, but they're going to model both.
And my sense, and you're probably on this, is that there's that aspect of it, but it's back to, as Mr. Carberg had referenced, a bit of the constructability,
Yep.
Nantucket factor, if you will, for transport of materials, and making sure that there's an acoustical piece of the equation,
Yes.
as well as a cost benefit and engineering side of things. So you're still looking at that.
Yes, we have got I'll call it a mainland price, but we want to sort of look at specifics on Nantucket, especially the foundation. I think, as everybody aware, is Nantucket is essentially a big sandbar. So the foundation design is going to be maybe a little more robust than normal, because the soil characteristics are probably not where they want to be.
And I believe we need a task order with MJ to continue. Is that correct?
So yes, once I prepare the whole scope and fee, we will send it to NOAA for review. And then once it's reviewed, then the task order would be signed, or would be go to the board for signature.
And are you confident that's something we can have for our next meeting?
we're hoping that's the case, yes.
would really appreciate that.
Yep.
And this is, I understand that
Yep.
you've got a lot of projects going on, but
Yep. Yep.
I think that it would be greatly appreciated. Thank you. Anything else on the noise barrier? Mr. Calbrick, back to you.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to project updates. Since the April meeting, significant work has been completed. As of today, we're at day 70 of 150, so nearly halfway through the project. Many items are now completed and delivered, such as the duct bank and transformer pads, installing infiltration chambers in the trunk lines, screening and stockpiling loam, and placing the subbase, the P154 and the P209, with much of it having been tested for compaction and everything tested, passing well. Between today and the next Airport Commission meeting, we anticipate completing following items: building forms and pouring concrete for the hard stand, installing catch basins on the existing ramp, completing the placements and completing the placing and compacting of the remaining subbase, installing light poles, and a few other miscellaneous items. We anticipate laying asphalt after Memorial Day weekend. We will have a pre-paving meeting after Memorial Day weekend to get more into the schedule and details specific to pavement. But the very, very general work plan for paving is on the order of 30 work days, 6 weeks of paving about 600 tons per day. Are there any questions on the project updates before I move on to follow up to comments from the April 9th meeting?
No seeing any. Why don't we move on?
So there were 3 items that I picked up for response from the April 9th meeting. This is the response to lead-free gas, the request for liners and a membrane, and air monitoring equipment. So if people don't already know, the FAA is funded by periodic appropriations by Congress, and this is a current FAA reappropriation year, or an FAA reauthorization year. Senate has recently passed FAA reauthorization bill. The House is expected to follow suit with a bicameral bipartisan bill. It's expected to be signed by President Biden within the next week or 2. This version includes a civil fine for airports of up to $5,000 per day if they stop selling leaded avgas. And that's included now in the version that is expected to be signed. So I say, Congress doesn't seem to agree on much, but they do agree that airports should continue to have this product available. Both Congress, our trade group, and me as your airport manager, we continue to endorse the industry's Project Eagle as a consensus effort among airports, operators, and regulators. It has broad support to develop a lead-free fuel alternative that's a drop-in alternative. That means you can literally drop it in the supply stream and mingle it with the current low lead product. So that is where that is headed, and we'll continue to track and update that. We also had a request to place liners under all construction soils related to this project. I've looked at it. I'd say this is not a consensus measure, even in our opposition. We had initially proposed to line and cap soils as part of the berm. This was broadly derided by the community, who expressed their opinion that such a liner was doomed to fail. This opinion is still expressed as recently as annual town meeting, that this solution is not comfortable to them. Solutions really, I'll say that, it's not comforting to the public. My proposal is to continue as we are already doing, which is replacing the local soil back into place in the project footprint, where it will be hydro-seeded with an ecological-based seed mix, and the remainder located to the sand pit in the center of the airfield. Similarly, it was requested that the airport install air monitoring equipment, and the purpose of this air monitoring equipment was to detect and warn neighbors of airborne PFAS. This isn't a practical solution. So I don't think there's a commercial system available that accomplishes this, let alone one that exists for sale. My own review is acquiring one according to the town's capital process could take 12 to 18 months, even if the equipment existed. Again, a far quicker and more practical solution to address the public perception of concern is to complete our project by capping the project site with a layer of asphalt and hydro-seeding the screened loam with grass. And that's currently the direction that I am proceeding. The next item, if there are no questions, I was going to have Cameron give a brief PFAS update.
I had a question, Mr. Carberg. Most of the piles have been relocated or are currently moved at this point that were of concern. Is that correct? In terms of loose soil, if you would, that was in the ramp project area.
Yeah, so all the sort of excess soil has been relocated to the sand pit across the runway and in the middle of the airfield by the ASR 9 or the radar. The loam that's still on site is top dressing loam that is going to be hydro-seeded. You know, a number of the other piles were clean material, what's called, it's not bank material, it's manufactured material. It was drainage stone, it was 209 barged over by the contractor for subbase. So I know there was some concern over some photos of material piles, but the majority of those material piles, absent a big pile of loam, you know, that was material barged in for construction on the site.
Thank you. Commissioners, any further questions? I'm seeing none, then sounds like we'll go to Ms. Woods.
I have a very brief PFAS update for this period. We still have 6 homes that are receiving bottled water currently. And on Wednesday, May 8th, we had Weston Solutions on site to conduct a standard performance sampling of our fuel farm treatment system, the GAC filter, and that was very successful. So we're awaiting those results and I can keep you posted on those. That's it for me.
Any questions for Ms. Woods?
No.
I had one. Did we or what's the status of the soils investigation along Monahanset Road? Sorry, I didn't have a chance to ask you on that earlier. I know that was something that was pending.
I believe we wrapped that up last month, but I will circle back with Jim because I know we had taken samples and already received those results. So I'll check in with him and can report back to you directly.
Thank you. Any other questions on PFAS? Back to you, Mr. Carberg.
For the crew quarters project, we've received 4 bids in response to our request for proposal. We've evaluated the proposals and are preparing to make an award. After that award designation, we would then move forward with contract administration and scheduling. I don't want to jump ahead to what that schedule would be, but there is a lead time to build modular structures, have them mobilized to the island. It's not an immediate item. It's on the order of months.
If I could just.
I've heard it could be 4 months for construction of the modular units. I think we are looking at late fall or early winter. We want to begin the site work and get the concrete for the foundation poured while we still can at the end of the fall. And then I'd say put the units together and finish them over the winter to have them available hopefully for the spring. But I don't want to commit to that.
No, just general. I really appreciate it. It's just really exciting that we've got to this point, and so thank you. Did anybody have any questions on the crew quarters project? There was a lot of concern, I think, from all of us, you know, with the amount and the bids, and so getting past this, I think, was a really big hurdle that we've been working, I think, a lot of years towards collectively. So great work and thank you.
On the brief update on the terminal optimization project, the engineer, Mr. Laston, who's here, has received a Revit model. It is late from the sub-consultant and we are behind, but we are working to move forward with the program definition document enabled by receiving this Revit model. And then we can have some initial schedules, estimates, and review the concepts that the commission has endorsed from its design charrette.
And timeline on next step or, next milestone.
I'll start, but I might refer to Rich. I think June, July timeframe, Rich, we are looking for a formal review of the program definition document. Should contain approximately a 10% level of design and potential cost. And that information should guide the commission if this within the walls concept is going to meet our initial expectations from the charrette as far as scope, cost, meeting need, if additional funding would be available, or any other sort of open design questions. A couple of the items that we are anticipating, even small terminal projects on the mainland are incurring a large per square foot cost. And we're building in 2 areas that are going to have very high square foot costs. There are a number of utilities that run under the courtyard. If we're looking to do any work there, and relocating the checked baggage inspection system for a larger hold room, that's expensive, complicated equipment to relocate.
Great, thank you. Anybody else have any questions on the terminal optimization project?
May I defer to Mr. Lasden if I misspoke or missed anything important?
Mr. Lassen, anything you wish to add?
No, everything he said is right on. He did mention costs. We are seeing terminal costs in the $1,200 to $1,500 square foot price on the mainland. So terminals are getting pretty pricey. So and hopefully in the next couple of weeks we'll be out meeting with Mr. Carberg with some options, sort of conferring with the one option that we've shown in the past and then moving on with some other options.
Super, thank you.
Yep.
Back to you, Mr. Carberg, for annual town meeting review.
Okay, so town meeting was long and contentious this year. Discussion involved 2 airport articles. Article 3 was the airport's prior year appropriations. 2 appropriations totaling $3.6 million to pay off debt associated with the South Apron were amended on town meeting floor to require several conditions associated with airport operations to be met first. I've never seen that happen before, and I'm working further to understand those implications. Article 49 was a zoning article related to rezoning the project footprint for the South Apron ramp. The article itself was not impactful, pass or fail, but it was taken as an opportunity for ATM attendees to express their dissatisfaction with the airport's stewardship of its PFAS investigation, the role of private aviation in the town's economy, and past and current long-term development decisions. I felt that was notable, so I'm bringing it up here. Generally, though, I'd remind the commission, even in light of that feedback that we received on town meeting floor, that they're making decisions that have led to a safe and economically vibrant airport. Mass DOT publishes an economic impact study that is available online. It's due for revision, but even as far back as 2021, that study reflects that the airport generates 3,800 jobs and $379 million for the local economy per year. We're able to do that without using any general tax revenue. We've also spent $9 million on a PFAS investigation and mitigation effort without a sense of support from the town's general fund. We can also do this because we remain in compliance with federal regulations for operating an airport and associated use of its revenue. So these are all things that exist on the balance together. We'll keep moving forward. Any questions on ATM before I move into finance?
Commissioners? Finance, please.
A few items here. There is the 3rd quarter for fiscal year 2024. That report is in your packet. It covers January to March, which is the traditional slow period. on the airport and on the island. I have a few bullets. I'm not going to dwell on it, but I think it's important for a couple of reasons. Airport revenue of 21 million, expenses of 13 million, and net earnings of 8 million are in line with fiscal year 2023. More importantly to me, we've been stable since the second quarter of fiscal year 2024. We've maintained a strong positive net earnings position during a period of low cash flow, or relatively low cash flow. Rental income continues to increase through reassessment of existing and our new leases. That's one reason why we can maintain a positive cash flow during our aeronautically slow period. Interest on investments has also increased, as you might expect, given the rate environment. And these items were offset by lower aviation activity and that associated fee and fuel sale decrease. Expenses are lower, but this is primarily based on a timing change for our retirement obligation withdrawal. Collectively, when I look at all of this information, we're tracking with fiscal year 2023, which itself was a very strong year. So we've made our budgeted revenue even prior to the final quarter in our fuel transfer, which I'll discuss next. The big picture item is this helps support our capital requests, which you will see shortly, and underwrites our ability to keep taking on projects without taking them to long-term debt and occupying that debt balance on the town sheet for projects that the town would like to do. I'm sorry, I believe I still have Jamie online. Are there any questions on quarter 3 before I move on?
Commissioners? Hearing none.
Okay. I'm referring back to Exhibit 1, the contract item for McFarland Johnson. I asked him, thank you for approving a contract with McFarland Johnson for our required environmental monitoring. This is the companion item that addresses the borrowing authorization for that project. So this particular project was developed by the airport and the FAA after we concluded our capital process for fiscal year 25. And our fiscal year 25 projects were approved at annual town meeting last week. So we haven't yet had the opportunity to present this project to the FinCom and the Select Board. The airport, to take advantage of this grant, would need to accept the grant in August before the special town meeting that's upcoming in September. So we have a window of a few months to receive the authorization for this project. I'll say we had anticipated this exact position in regard to the timing eventually of annual town meeting and the FAA grant cycle several years ago. And we established Article 94 at the 2021 annual town meeting. This article developed a home rule process whereby the airport, the FinCom, and the Select Board could authorize grant-funded projects for the airport to go forward and not miss a funding deadline. The first step would be the airport approval, and that's a vote that I'm asking for you for today. Then FinCom approval, we've gotten on the agenda for FinCom, followed by Select Board approval. So this is the home rule petition funding process for grant-funded projects that was enabled by 2021 ATM. So I'm asking for your approval to proceed under Article 94 from the 2021 annual town.
Does anybody have any questions on this item? It is sort of a new one, but I think that it's exactly the reason that we spent the years that we did getting that in place, and being able to lump this together for a purpose, especially for the monitoring, I think is great. So if there aren't any questions, or even if there are, I would entertain a motion to approve the capital approval process for the continued environmental monitoring grant.
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
And so the motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion, questions, exactly what Mr. Carberg reviewed and the next steps or anything of that sort? Hearing none, we'll go to a vote. Ms. Topham, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Planzer?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you.
Okay.
Back to you, Mr. Carberg.
Okay, thank you. I'll keep you updated on the progress as we go through those next meetings.
If I may, just to interrupt, I'm sorry to interrupt. If you could also keep us posted on the meeting dates for the FinCom, I'd like to provide support. And I don't know if there's any other commissioners that, may be interested in watching along there. Thank you.
Will do. So similarly, the other item that may be in that FinCom select board meeting is our fuel revolver increase. So we discussed as staff in the February meeting that we had anticipated needing to increase the fuel revolver cap this fiscal year, but we wanted to wait a few months until we had as much clarity as possible for the price and sales forecast, while still having time to execute this change prior to the end of the fiscal year. So that time is now in this meeting. Jamie has done the work. It's always impeccable. We need to raise the purchase cap in the fuel revolver from 6.9 million to 8.9 million based on current price trends. This will give us the funds necessary for purchases as well as a buffer to close out the fiscal year. The increase to our fuel revolver reduces the amount of fuel revolver funding that automatically moves over the cap and into our operating budget. For example, we budgeted for 2 million in overflow in our fiscal year 24 budget. As of the end of April, even reflecting and assuming this change in the fuel revolver, we will still sit at $3.1 million in fuel revolver revenue. So the change is not impactful to operating revenue, but it does allow us the ability to keep purchasing fuel and keeping up with demand, which everyone knows what happens to the island in the month of June. So as complicated as managing the fuel revolver can be, we haven't had to make a change in a couple of years. This is still a really good tool for managing the transition between fiscal years without an interruption, especially during a period of such high activity. So every once in a while, this is just something that we need to do. And as with the previous item, I believe we do need a vote for your approval to increase the fuel revolver.
Any questions, or is there a motion to authorize the increase in the fuel revolver?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
A motion is made and seconded. Any further discussion or questions? It's continued positive management. Thank you for that, Mr. Carberg and Ms. Sansbury. Ms. Topham, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Planzer?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Thank you. And back to you, Mr. Carberg, to discuss fiscal year 26 potential capital projects.
Okay. There is a handout in the packet, and I think I would ask Boyan if you could share that capital handout as I walk through it. I do plan on taking some time to go through these items line by line. You're welcome to ask me at each line or at the end if you have questions on each project. But what we have developed for you is staff's draft final list of our fiscal year 2026 capital items. We worked to develop this list for the town's internal capital project approval. Next meeting, I don't think we need a vote from you, but we'd like your approval or consent or acknowledgement on a final list. So we will bring this back to you again in June because it is still a work in progress. We have a lot of requests on here, a lot of needs, and a lot of spending priorities. These are not final amounts. Some of the projects may change, but I think we're pretty close. One additional item for your consideration or to keep in the back of your mind is, as we go forward, identifying which items we can build back and charge back, such as the cost of ground service equipment to those users through rates and charges, and those that we can't, such as housing. So with that in mind, we have 3 AIP projects reflected. We have a third ARF truck for 1.5 million. The FAA reauthorization language has authorized an additional 330 or 350 million to airports nationwide to help transition from AFFF to F3. AFFF is the aqueous film forming foam that contains PFAS. F3 is the fluorine-free foam. We already have one truck coming in 2025 that will be new and contain the F3 foam. I want to get another truck that is clean and contains the F3 foam because you can never fully decontaminate ARF trucks. There are recommendations, there are different products to get them really 99% of the way clean, but they're never completely clean. So as part of our transition plan, I want to maximize our ability not only to have new trucks and trucks that are fluorine-free, but trucks that all have the same product, because our firefighters have to attack fires differently with an F3 product compared to an AFFF product. This also has implications for our increase from an index B to an index C. It'll be approximately $1.5 million of an AIP, typical 90%, 5%, 5% project. I'm holding funds for continued environmental permitting. Thank you again for your 2 approvals previously. But if this doesn't make it through the home rule petition, I'm holding an item here on our capital list for fiscal year 26. I think I've explained that project a few times, so I'm not going to spend more time on it. I'm reflecting for the time being a supplemental terminal funding with an amount to be determined, as Mr. Lasden indicated. We'll have a better idea on cost in a month or 2. This won't remain as a TBD item forever. Once we complete the program definition document, we will know what we have. We have $17 million currently authorized. But for a couple reasons, we might expect a gap. As Rich mentioned, cost of construction is high. The other item that we're seeing as the Bill ATP funding program has rolled out its awards is that airports our size are really only receiving $4 to $5 million at a time. There aren't airports our size that are receiving 10, 15, or $20 million. $20 million is the maximum amount that I believe the ATP can give an airport our size, but they're not giving out, a small number of large grants. They seem to be focusing on giving out a large number of smaller grants. So that's part of our calculus. Most interesting, I am asking for a supplemental $3.5 million in PFAS authorization. So as Jim Sukop from Weston Solutions indicated in his presentation from the April meeting, the EPA has now promulgated a revised maximum contamination limit and published a circular ruling. Mass DEP is probably going to lower their MCLs to match the EPA's in the next, and I'm just throwing out the guess that our consultants have, 12 to 18 months, as our LSP spoke to. The likely outcome is that the airport takes on further work, and I don't know what this work is going to be. If it's home connections, I want to have the funds to jump on that as soon as possible. If it's more monitoring and more sampling, I want to have that to jump on as soon as possible. So right now, this number is a guess. I'm comfortable with 3.5 million. If we don't need 3.5 million, we won't borrow to it. If we need more, we'll come back and we'll borrow some more. I have $5 million for roof replacement, flooring repair, and decommissioning of the AFFF tank and pumping system in the ARC building. We're working with Mr. Laston to get a better estimate, one that's hopefully lower. But the metal roof is rusting, it is old. We are now experiencing significant leaks in the upstairs mechanical rooms that need some work. The flooring isn't a big item, but I do want to address it comprehensively. And the decommissioning of the AFFF tank. As our building was built and designed, it had a central tank that would pump the AFFF into the firefighting tanks. So we need to decommission and dispose of all of those items according to the new CERCLA standards. And I think that's going to be difficult because it's a new standard to to identify a cost. So all of that contributes to the $5 million that we're reflecting currently. I have $6 million for phase 2 of employee housing. That is the townhouse. You know, between you and me and the reporting, ARF trucks are necessary, PFAS is necessary, ARF building roof and work is necessary. We really want employee town housing, but it is not necessary. So this may be an item that I continue to go forward through the capital process, but has to come off. I have an additional gate hard stands. We'll get a price for that. This is in a response to airline upgauging. We had funds available to do 2 this spring. I'll talk about that later. We are asking for authorization to build a ground service equipment building. We have a small garage now of 400 feet. I intend to build up to 4,000 feet to store and maintain not only our existing GSC, but the items that I'll go through in a few lines here and that I expect us to buy in the future to help support our positive ramp management plan for the community. We want to be a good steward to the community, but part of this means that we need more and larger GPUs, we need more tugs, and we need a place to store this equipment so it doesn't rust out in 2, 3, or 4 years. I'm holding funds for the noise barrier for the south ramp extension. At this point in scoping, I don't know if there are enough funds or existing project funds, or if the scope of this work is consistent with the scope of the noise berm as it was presented and approved by annual town meeting. So I'm holding a project here. I'm holding it for special town meeting, but I intend to treat it as a capital project, whereas Rich develops this task order for us and the scope of work. I'm providing all of this information to town finance, to the capital committee, to FinCom at their request. I have here what is called a triturator. I've had some suggestions. I explain what a triturator is. A triturator is typically, it's a skid mounted grinder and pump that's used to treat received septage before it's injected or pumped into the publicly owned treatment system. This is to upgrade our existing facility. We do have a lab cart. We do have a cost recovery mechanism for accepting lab waste from aircraft at the airport. We're speccing this for $250,000. Typically, the pump and the grinder are in a vault below ground, and the item that you see above ground is a small electrical cabinet. Paint and beads, we will identify a price, but we typically identify a project every year or every 2 years to keep up with painting the airfield. 1 year it might be runway 624, another year it might be runway 1533, an alternating year it might be the taxiway system. We have to identify this project and identify the price accordingly for the amount of markings. And then we've also reflected a ground power unit and a preconditioned air unit, 2 units totaling $1 million. These are to help us manage large aircraft on the ramp and manage them quietly. There are GPUs out there now that are fully electric. They will sit potentially in the upgraded GSE building and charge and power aircraft instead of being powered by diesel. So we're excited about that. I believe the Vineyard has just taken delivery of one of these units, and they speak highly of it. We also have another tug for $410,000 and a passenger bus for $130,000. So I know that's a lot individually and collectively, so I'll pause here for questions.
Commissioners, questions? It's a bit of a reality dose here of, I think, some of the, significant costs and needs of the airport. And I think we're gonna have to continue to work on this in terms of the wants versus the needs as well. It might be some hard decisions we have to make. Mr. Carberg, should we anticipate this list for our June meeting with maybe perhaps some more of the TBD blanks filled in? you know, is that we're gonna, at what point does it go from the commission to the town? I know there was some directive or hope, I think, that they were that they wanted to get it a little sooner in the process, but it seems that there's a fair amount of work that we may need to do first.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a give and take. The town has their capital schedule that we want to support. We've already let them know that, especially when it comes to our AIP projects, we are subject to an AIP planning timeframe that unfortunately doesn't begin until August. They understand. Typically, we have multi-page capital packets for each of these items. As part of that packet, there aren't TBDs. Each of them are filled out in detail by project year and portion of costs, project narratives, diagrams, bids. So our goal is to get each one of these projects into the best shape they can be as far as a full capital packet. And you've seen those in your commission packets before. There's several pages for each item under a prescribed format. I'm not promising I can get all, but I'm going to get every project advanced as far as I can.
Thank you. I will say there's some concern with the price tag associated with the ARF building. I have, no doubt that it is a critical piece of infrastructure that we simply cannot operate without. But at that level, it's I think we're really going to need some more information and to understand if there are alternatives. I mean, that's at a cost that I think back when it was done, that I can't remember what the cost of the building was. I think it was about that, and now it's the same cost to repair it. I understand times are different, inflation, all of those things, but I think that really be looking for a better understanding of alternatives, and if there's options to phase that perhaps or not. As you talk about sort of the want versus the need for the very next capital year. And we've spent a lot of time on 5-year capital improvement plans and those types of documents. And this sort of is I get that things come up, but that's a big one. Anyone else? Okay, so we'll look for that at the next meeting as well, and any further information or detail, as you mentioned, that you might be able to put into some of those, I think would be helpful.
Okay. Thank you. I would like to turn the floor. I'm sorry.
So are both of the MassDOT awards remain pending, correct?
Correct. Both MassDOT awards remain pending.
All right, so that'll take us on to the noise and ramp management presentation.
Okay, I'd like to turn the floor over to Preston Harriman, the Assistant Airport Manager, and Cameron Woods, the Airport's Environmental Coordinator, for their presentation on noise and ramp management. We typically do this kind of presentation May of every year before our busy season. I'm especially excited to have you guys hear from someone else for a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carberg. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to share my screen here. So give me 1 second, please. Everybody able to see that?
Yes.
Okay. I know a few months ago, we actually presented a ramp management plan, and we're going to roll through this again with some modifications and some revisions to the plan itself and how we think we can operate this more efficiently to reduce, noise emissions, safety for everybody on the ground and the pilots, passengers, everybody that's flying in. So some of these slides you might have seen before. Some of the photos are kind of the same. We really want to show the congestion that we're dealing with in the past, and and what the new ramp or the new apron expansion, how it's gonna help us moving forward. One thing I want to do is please keep in mind that this is still a draft form. We still need, gonna have to work out some details to ensure that this plan works and it works as intended. It's gonna take a learning curve for us to get this right. And once the new apron does open up, we're gonna be working very hard with AC staff, operations, FBO, the administrative team to make sure that this monitoring plan for noise emissions safety is going to work across the board. And ultimately, we want to make sure that we're reducing the noise and the emissions for the surrounding neighborhoods and the residents that are nearby. So this is kind of a quick snapshot of our thought on taking the existing ramp plus the new expansion and cutting it in basically, or creating zones, zone 1, zone 2, and zone 3. The colors are going to represent hot, warm, and cold. We had mentioned that in the previous presentation, and we're adding zones to it to try to refine our operation. So again, we have 3 zones, but we're going to have essentially 5 intended uses. So hot, warm, cold, mixed, and our VIP operations. So here we have our hot ops, or zone 1. So this will span basically from the FBO or taxiway Bravo all the way down to taxiway Juliet, or near 30B, which is our construction gate. Now this is going to be a year-round operation. Will allow aircraft to power in and power out of parking. There will also be a lot of towing operations going on in this area, moving planes around, trying to get aircraft that are coming in on quick turns up front, closer to the FBO, so they can get in and out in a timely fashion. APU restrictions are going to apply. Ms. Woods will cover that here in a couple of minutes when we get toward the end of the presentation. The parking orientation is going to remain the same. They're going to be facing the northwest. The goal behind that is to ensure that the APUs are basically facing taxiways and runways, and to help reduce the noise from the APUs. Plus, during engine startup, all of the jet blast is headed toward the runway. One thing I do want to note is on certain occasions when the wind is really blowing down runway, let's see, it would be to the southeast. So the aircraft would basically have a tailwind. Some of these aircrafts, such as Cessna Citations, have tail limitations where they can't start the engine on a certain tail knot component. And the pilots will ask FBO line service staff to basically turn the aircraft into the wind for engine start. So when that happens, we'll make sure that we relay the information to the crew, like, please do your pre-flight inspections, checks, everything you can do with the aircraft in the Northwest configuration. When you're ready to go, we'll have the tug ready. Hook up, spin it around, let them start, and taxi out as soon as possible. Zone 2. So the new apron expansion. Our thoughts here are, let's basically cut it in half, and we're going to create zone 2 and zone 3. Zone 2, we're going to put some hours of operations on here, 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. We're gonna allow aircraft to power into parking and then towed out for departure. APU, again, restrictions are going to apply just like they do on zone 1. We're going to encourage pilots to utilize our GPUs for everything they can for heating, cooling the aircraft, all of the pre-flight checks they need to do, getting their clearance from air traffic, and then allowing them to utilize that GPU for engine start, towing them out, and getting them on their way as soon as possible. The goal on the hours of operation is going to be, so after hours, we won't allow, no aircraft will be allowed to power into parking. So no power in, and then APU restrictions will be prohibited. So it'll be tow in, tow out only. And then we will allow GPUs at this point. Mr. Carberg had mentioned the electric GPUs that we're looking at. And the Vineyard has some, and they really like them, and they're super efficient. So the second half of the new expansion, we think we're gonna label it Zone 3. The idea behind this is to utilize this section of the new apron for long-term or static aircraft only. So basically cold storage. We're going to allow pilots to do their pre-flights, of course, and any mechanics that need to do any system testing for that aircraft. So we can allow a GPU in that area. And then we'll have the area closed from December 15th, so basically right after Christmas stroll, through May 15th, which would be probably leading into, I believe, Wine Festival, with the exception of maybe Thanksgiving with some bigger VIP movements with some C-17s and the 757 aircraft. I want to jump back real quick here on Zone 2. The idea of having mixed operations in Zone 2, I think, is going to be super helpful. I envision Zone 3 filling up and kind of bleeding over into Zone 2. Thus, half of Zone 2, or maybe even all of Zone 2, could possibly be cold storage. Unfortunately, we're not going to know or understand how it's going to work and how it's going to work efficiently until we actually use it, and what line service staff comes back with recommendations on how we can improve different zones and operations. On the other side of that, there'd be a good time where we're gonna use it as the hot operations for aircraft to power in, like I had mentioned before. Get those aircraft in and out in a timely manner so they can relieve some of the pressure out of Zone 1, which I think is the ultimate goal, is get the aircraft that are sitting for longer periods of time out of Zone 1 into 2 and into 3, so we can run a more efficient Zone 1, because basically that's where all of our people are. That's where our FBO, that's where our line service shack basically is. It's our operations building. The fire station is where all of the line service staff report to. Our small little 2-car garage with our GSE storage is right in Zone 1. So we want to kind of keep all our eggs in one basket, essentially, and operate. The ramps is big and it's hard to manage. But if we can take the aircraft and move them down further for the storage, it's going to make more efficient operations in Zone 1. So for Zone 2, what we're thinking is for kind of hot operations. So coming up, we'd be looking at Boston Pops. Mid-August would be race week. Labor Day weekend, of course, the Nantucket project, Thanksgiving. Of course, we all know we're going to get some big airplanes then. Christmas stroll, that is always getting, seems like it's getting bigger every single year. That could bleed over into zone 2. And then, of course, rolling into spring of 2025, we've got Wine Fest, Memorial Day, Film Fest, and 4th of July, and Comedy Fest. So those are the holidays and the festivals that we'd be looking at for the hot ops for zone 2. I don't know if this is going to play. It's kind of been a pain in the butt recently. I've had to upload this a couple of times, but it's a video of me driving down the ramp in one of our tugs and taking this video in July 2019. I counted, I think, 12 static airplanes that could be towed into zone 2, into zone 3 to allow us to operate this ramp a little more efficiently. So I'm looking at all the aircraft with the doors closed. Could temporarily mean that they may be overnight. They could be here for a couple of hours, but more than likely they're overnight. Get line service staff to move them out of the way and accommodate more inbound aircraft in zone 1. So on to VIP movements. Zone 2 and Zone 3, we could be used exclusively for the C-17 Secret Service. Any other, bigger events, whether we get POTUS or FLOTUS on the ground, we have a little more space for them to operate safely and a little more kind of a secure area. So on to grass parking. So the north ramp, northwest of Texas Golf, where our row of T-hangers are, we've identified 13 positions over there could be used for a small general aviation aircraft, single engine or light twin aircraft. We'd utilize this area once our area that is filled up in zone 1, basically. So the area that I always say it's by the fence, underneath the ramp lights, those are classified as our tie down area. And it's mainly smaller single engine light twin aircraft. Once that area is full, we're going to jump our operations. We're going to escort aircraft or direct them over to the north ramp area into these 13 positions. We'll stay with the pilots and the passengers, escort them back to the FBO so they can check in and ask for services, whatnot. And then reverse that, escort the pilots and the passengers back over to the north ramp. This is going to take some manpower and some time. Allow them to pre-flight the aircraft. Once they get into the aircraft, to start up the engines, and we can leave them, and then they're basically on their way and contact ground, and off they go onto the taxiway. The idea is to utilize zone 1 or the tie downs underneath the ramp lights first, move over to this grass parking on the north ramp and then utilize the 12 proposed or the 12 grass tie downs that will be installed at the end of the new apron as a last resort type of scenario. My thoughts here on attempting to get the word out to pilots of like, where are you parking and what are the restrictions? So our lamp posts have already APU restriction signs on them. We're going to be adding more of those. I'd like to see if we could add zone parkings to either the light posts or even on some 4x4 posts that are off into the grass and a safe distance away, notifying these pilots of where they're at. And then in the FBO, or even if we can get this out on some of our air nav or ForeFlight attention pilots, saying basically know your zone, know where you're parking, and know the restrictions for these areas, so they know whether or not they're in zone 1, like, okay, we're here, we need to plan ahead, we need to call the FBO, get the aircraft moved into zone 1, we have a departure in 2 hours. So basically getting the word out to these pilots and saying, hey, plan ahead and know your zone, know where you're parked at, here are the restrictions for Nantucket. And again, more additional signage that we want to plaster all over the building here is to fly friendly at Nantucket, follow our recommended flight corridors, avoid flying over the island, call ahead on Unicom for parking instructions, follow our APU restrictions, coordinate in advance with FBO and line service staff. We're going to try to push, hey, please avoid flying in these hours, and then check NOTAMs frequently because things change on a dime. The X1 FBO software that we use here at the FBO has got a great tool. It's called the Arrival and Departure Board, also known as the AD board. I think this is going to be a useful tool. We can actually add in where aircraft are parked, and then line service staff or the individuals that are upstairs working our watch room can see under the red arrow where it says activity, it says POL, that's pull online. So those guys or gals could actually look at that date and the time and say, all right, hey, 707 Juliet Sierra is going to be leaving 8 o'clock today. We need to make sure they get out of zone 3 or out of zone 2. Let's get them up close into the FBO into zone 1. So it has the capability. We may have to enter some information into the system so it works for us. And again, I want to just let everybody know that this, implementing a plan like this is going to, unfortunately, it's going to be a trial and error process. We're going to figure out what works and what works best. And safety, of course, is going to be our ultimate goal. Again, we're going to want to make it work effectively and efficiently. And of course, we're going to, make adjustments and modifications on the fly. So we can ensure the safety for all of our customers, pilots, and everybody working on the ground. So that's the end of what I have for the ramp management aspect. I know I said APU probably 1,000 times, but I know Ms. Woods is going to go over it again. So Tag, you're it.
Thank you, Preston. That was a great overview of the new plan. I'm really excited about this. So in looking at most of our noise complaints over the past year, particularly during the summer, our peak seasons, when we have these festivals and peak traffic, a lot of the complaints are coming from aircraft that are on the ground. It's not aircraft flying over residents per se. It's aircraft that have been running for an hour, and why are they doing this? What is happening? We're just trying to enjoy our summertime. So APU targeting is the key to that for us. So in addition to the new ramp operational model, we're really targeting pilots in control and aircraft and informing them of APU limitations. So these will go into effect in zone 1 and zone 2, and we will roll out the APU absolutely prohibited signs in zone 1 as we construct that phase. So our three-pronged approach to APU use and awareness to these pilots it's threefold. So the first is a notice of noise sensitivity by the FBO customer service reps. They are the ones that will have the first point of contact with any GA aircraft coming in. It will be very brief. They will just let them know that these noise restrictions are in place. Number 2 will be an alert of APU limitations by ops staff, line servicemen and women on the ground or the radio. And the third is just a general increase in signage and messaging visible to all pilots and all passengers throughout the FBO and on the ramp. So diving into the notices that are permitted by FBO CSR, I've listed a few of them here. Nantucket is noise sensitive. Please adhere to the fly friendly program. Noise restrictions are in effect, APU restrictions are in effect, or minimize APU use to 15 minutes or less. We need to keep these short because these are pilots coming in, they're 15 minutes out and just alerting us that they are on their way before they transfer over to air traffic control frequency and then ultimately operations frequency and ground frequency. At which point there will be 2 opportunities for the ops staff to advise pilots of the restrictions. The first is when an aircraft switches over and they make that first point of contact with the ground operations frequency. The tower operator can relay a similar message of APU restrictions, keep it to 15 minutes or less over that frequency. When the aircraft has then taxied into position, there's also an opportunity for the lines person on the ground to relay the message face to face. That is my preferred method of informing them. I think that face to face always is a bit more effective. But the operations staff, regardless, has been advised that they must relay this message during one or both of these interactions. So that would be the second time then that the pilot has been informed of the APU limitations and or general noise sensitivity around Nantucket. And the third, because we just cannot inform these pilots enough, will just be increased signs, increased messaging, letters. We've purchased additional signs to put up around the south ramp to advise pilots of the restrictions, and we will purchase additional signs notifying them of APU, the prohibiting APU use on in zone 3. Apologies. We've also posted additional messaging around the pilot lounge in the FBO building and published letters to our partners reminding them of the fly friendly program and advising them of our recommended noise corridors during VFR conditions. In terms of monitoring, we will continue to conduct our monthly flight audits to determine adherence. As a reminder, that is done by myself, and it is looking at 20 hours of flight tracking every month. We note number of IFR trips, we note number of VFR trips, and within the VFR trips, we note those in compliance and out of compliance with the corridors. We also conduct, and by we, I mean me, conduct investigations into every complaint that is received, and in both cases of any violation, follow-up is performed. We're also excited to install 2 permanent noise monitoring terminals known as NMTs along the existing south ramp and the extension in the coming month. The foundation for these terminals will be laid either this week or next week, and from there they will be installed and monitoring will ramp up mid-summer. So I'm excited about those. I love numbers, I love tracking, and I think that it will be very helpful in informing this policy and letting us know how this new ramp operational model is working, because it's certainly new for us and exciting, and we just want to make sure that we're doing the absolute best we can to mitigate noise and emissions on the ramp. So I think that concludes our presentation, and I know both Mr. Herman and myself would be happy to answer any questions the commission or any residents have. I'm not sure if we're taking public comments a little bit after, Mr. Chair.
Thank you both. That's impressive and exciting. I agree. Commissioners, any questions, comments on the presentation? Mr. Marks?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate that, yeah, a lot of the jets have to be face into the wind, and it's as little as 15 knots of that they have to be spun around because they can't start, some of them. Also, I don't know if this is going to come later. I noticed in the end here, there's a lot about the noise relative to the FAA and stuff like that. One of the things, all these jets that are coming in and leaving here are all probably 95 or higher, 99% of them are all on flight plans. So I think if we're trying to help with mitigating the noise that they produce to like overflies and stuff like that, I think if I was reading in that noise sensitive thing at the end here about, I mean, arrivals and departures are what are going to help us get there. Getting the FAA to issue arrivals and departures to, you know, keep the pilots on that, you know, course longer before they make the turn to their heading, whichever it may be. Just a couple insights there. I'm happy if you guys have any questions about that. I'd be happy to help you understand that, or at least how the system works is from that perspective, being a pilot. Just wanted to throw that out to you guys.
Thank you. On that point, Mr. Marks, specific, I'm glad you brought it up. I think that I have long held out hope that as part of the master planning process and perhaps friendly and, you know, collaborative discussions with ATC, maybe we can get to a place where an understanding that there, you know, safety absolutely paramount. But if there was a way to maintain a heading after departure for even a slightly longer period of time before the instructions to turn, I think that could greatly promote the overwater routes. And I'm not sure exactly how we get there. It's a little different, I think, from what we've been discussing. I mean, it's wheels up, but I'm really hopeful. And I think part of that discussion we, you know, can have in the charrettes and groups related to the master planning process.
Yeah, I think the key there is the departure procedure. Because in a lot of airports that you leave out of, they have a departure procedure, and a lot of it is just fly runway heading to 1,500 feet. And then either on course at that point or as directed. And you'll get that when you take off from the tower, right? As part of your procedure. So like I'll give you an example the other day when I left IFR, 400 feet, they turned me on course, which turned me right over town. Right. So if we have a departure procedure, I think but that's more of an FAA thing, obviously. And it's nothing that the tower did wrong. It's just, that's the procedure, right? You hit 400 feet, turn, and then you get switched over to Boston and so on and so forth. But so I think to your point and agreeing with you, it's something we have to work with the FAA, I think. Not
Yeah,
just
if we
the
could
local
get
people
there.
here, but they have to be the ones to help us get that in place to mitigate those issues.
Thank you. Anybody else on the ramp management plan, questions or comments?
Nope.
I had a couple of thoughts. One, and I've mentioned this to Mr. Carver a couple of times, and I've started a draft. I would like to, as a commission, work to develop a policy that helps to support this management plan. And when I say policy, I think part of the goal, a lot of it is noise, you know, it mentions noise, but really I think an emissions reduction policy that's sort of similar to your fly friendly, that doesn't really contain mandates so much as sets forth the whereas type of guidance as adopted by the commission as the policy making body for the airport, and helps to also, as the staff, the people on the ground are trying to implement the management plan, and sometimes there is not always as much cooperation, if you will, to, you know, certain, especially voluntary procedures. There's something where they could say, look, this is essentially my boss and his boss and the policy, and this is why this is being done, and this is why, even more. So I'd like to set that as a bit of a mini goal, if you will, in future agenda items, and get input from all of you on sort of a draft, and have it as an agenda item that works to establish a policy for really continuing the environmental stewardship and the basis of trying to support emissions reduction. And I think it ties in really well to this management plan. I know it might be a little chicken and an egg. But I'm really happy to see this and the timing, and then I think it can help us guide that kind of a policy. The other thing that it really just kind of came to me as I was looking at this, is I'm wondering, as this is starting to roll out, and maybe it's for this season, and maybe it's for next, after we've sort of ironed out some wrinkles and learned, but is it something that it might be worth considering a bit of a I don't want to say a full-blown consultant type of a contract, but some assistance related to perhaps marketing and graphic design to really help with the messaging. Those folks that are specialize in that more, they might not know a single thing about, you guys are really geared towards on the focus of the mechanics, but that help. I don't know about you. I use the same font for everything, and very engineer-like, and probably starts to get glazed over. And there are folks that I think can help with messaging, and perhaps signage. And I'm not sure if that was directed to me, Mr. Buscarin, but anyway, it was just another thought that I had, that perhaps that if some resources there might help. I would certainly support that, and welcome if you had any ideas. I'm not talking about bringing in a big giant contract to rehash everything, but if there was something that would be helpful to putting that together, and that could perhaps tie to some social media, channels, that if we had, particular, especially knowing that you've got times that you might want to send out certain messages, as you had laid out those dates. We do have sort of it gets into a bit of a pattern here, and hey, if we can get a message on the Tuesday prior to a particular festival weekend, that's your effective timing to release, the same thing. And then you get it set up, and year after year, it's kind of the same. So that's just some thoughts that I had on conveying and communicating something like that. Yeah, that was really my thoughts. I really appreciate you putting this together, and looking forward to really stepping up this part of it to I think assist both the staff and the community. So, Mr. Marks.
Yeah, just to Cameron, through you, if you go into ForeFlight, I think there's probably two places we could probably get our message out there about the APUs. One is there's a remark section and a comment section under the FBOs. And I know I read those a lot when I'm going someplace to understand what might be odd about that airport. So in the remark section, you could probably put your whole APU thing in there. And I'm not sure if they'll allow you to put what lines you can add underneath the FBO itself. Maybe you could have a thing you could click on that, and then it would explain that as well. I'm not sure about that, but I think the remarks thing, you can just go and put those in.
Okay, that's a great suggestion.
Yeah,
we always we're trying to keep it as short as possible, because we understand that when pilots are drafting these plans and they're on a schedule as well. So keeping it as short and sweet as possible is something we've also been navigating through this, but that's a great suggestion. So I'll look into that. Thank you, Mr. Marks.
Yeah.
Anyone else? So again, thank you all. I really, really appreciate that. We'll move on to the manager's report.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. For our AIP projects, taxiway golf, Punch list work, I believe that is starting tomorrow. Most notably adjustment of 3 taxiway edge lights. The north ramp hard stands associated with that grant, they have been poured. The leaded lines have been painted. And I believe these will both be fully cured by May 30th and ready to accommodate traffic. For the airport master plan update, we have 2 meetings tomorrow. The first meeting is for the small group, the tax stakeholder group from 1 to 3 p.m. That's a hybrid meeting. The announcements and those materials have been circulated to the membership. We also have tomorrow our public open house. So this will be in the terminal from 6 to 8 p.m. tomorrow, Wednesday, May 15th. The format is senior airport staff and consultants talking with interested members of the public utilizing display boards. This has been broadly announced. Our consultant team will be presenting the boards and the content. You know, the public wants to ask, or if the public or the media want to ask questions on policy and opinion, please find an airport staff member. That would be me, that would be Cameron, and that would be Preston. No update on the geometry project. I'm sorry, we will have heavy apps and drinks as well, provided by Crosswinds. No update on geometry. We discussed the terminal optimization project previously. No update on the new ARC truck. For the runway 624 center line, the bids came in too high. We de-scoped it to something more manageable under our authorization, but the FAA would not extend a grant deadline by the 2 days that we needed. And we had some concerns along with the town about pursuing an emergency bid waiver, so we pushed this work out, unfortunately. I've asked Mr. Lasden to pursue a design-only grant. Otherwise, the design work that they've done is ineligible and becomes an airport cost. And then we would pursue a construction grant in a later year for that work. For non-AIP work, I think we've confirmed that the Hagedorn Group is still interested in the freight hangar. We'll move that along. We have a plan for relocating the fence in the bunker area. We need to move forward and engage our tenants and get that work done. For the fence relocation on the South Shore, unfortunately, we pushed this back into the fall due to plants permitting issues. And then the fuel farm loading rack, we're expecting a scope from McFarland Johnson for that work. For RFP and bid updates, we've received 4 proposals for 33 Bunker Road. Those are under internal review. For our invitation for bids for brush mowing services, we canceled that without making an award. I mentioned the center line. I mentioned crew quarters already. We awarded the quote for blown away heating and cooling. And we haven't been able to take action on crafting the RFP for valet parking. So I'll probably take that off the list for the summer, and we can think about that again in the fall. For our operations update, the triennial drill was held April 10th. It was a great drill, well performed by staff. I especially want to thank Preston for his work in organizing and getting that drill done, as well as the fire and police departments for their collaboration. We're grateful for our mutual aid partner assistance and the volunteer efforts of the high school. I think we had 50 to 60 students who came to be part of our drill, moulaged and role played their potential injuries as part of that drill. Our certification inspection, our annual FAA certification inspection was held May 7th through 9th. This is the annual review and inspection of the airport facilities and our administrative controls relevant to Part 139. It's an opportunity to both showcase our hard work and receive expert outside review. There are 2 focus areas that resulted from this year's inspection. Those include runway markings that will need to be touched up, adjustments to fuel farm signage, placards, and some other related items. We can meet all requirements within the proposed respective 90 and 30-day corrections. For fuel supply, we've received draft agreements from our vendor, and we are reviewing, and we will do that with legal counsel. We are topped off for Jet A, and we're keeping an eye on the full logistical chain associated with delivering Jet A from the terminal in Boston to Hyannis and to the airport on the steamship. We are hosting a tour for the STEAM effort. The STEAM effort is an effort through the Boys and Girls Club in partnership with the town to promote, I believe it's science and engineering. Several town departments are participating, and we will have an airport tour on the 21st. We're looking forward to that. A reminder for hybrid meetings. This is our last fully remote meeting. Beginning in June, we will meet in the trailer under a hybrid meeting format, so both remote attendance and in person. The FAA noise abatement chart supplement. In your packet, there's a draft request from the FAA to provide comments on how the chart supplement can be used by airports to communicate noise abatement information. My understanding as a non-pilot is that the chart supplement is an official FAA tool or pilot manual used to relay information about airports, primarily to general aviation pilots. Of course, we have 3 pilots in our commission. They may be able to provide a better explanation. But tomorrow, staff are attending a AAAE meeting tomorrow to get to have this presented, get some background information, and see how we can use it. I don't have a lot of technical suggestions right now, but it does appear to be an opportunity for the airport to comment on how the supplement can be structured for airports to utilize it as a tool to communicate noise abatement information. My suggestion and my course of action is that staff will attend this meeting. We'll review and we'll develop a written response for review by the commission in their next meeting. And the commission can adopt and direct as they would like. The comments would be due June 17th. We have 2 applications that are going to the upcoming planning board. One, this is my fault. I didn't think to put it in the packet, but it's our effort to extinguish an old easement in the bunker area. Paul Santos will be presenting that for us. The other is from our new tenant, GJ Smith, to review his container proposal. I'm still reviewing that. I think I've asked for a site plan in relation to that, but those are items that will go to another regulatory board. I'll follow up with those packages in our June commission meetings. For statistics, March total operations are down 8%. Year to date, they're down 11%. Southwest ramp operations are down 40% in March. Employments are up 34% March. Year to date, they're down 4%. For Cape Air in March, the Boston market was up 3%. New Bedford was up 1%. Hyannis was up 44%. And the Vineyard was down 47%. For Jet A sales, we remain up 3.6% on our 3-year average. We're down 4% over the last 3 months and up 7.8% the previous month, which was April. For the FBO trends, we're down 3.5% on the fiscal year, down 4% over the last 3 months, and up 7.8% over last April. And terminal sales, we won't update that until the new commercial season starts. For 100 low lead, we are down 15.4% over the 3-year average, down 7% in the last 3 months, and up 19% on the past month. Freight is up 8% in March and down 7% year to date. Cape Air freight, US Postal Service are up. UPS is down. FedEx in the packet, we're reflecting a change in carrier from Wiggins to Mountain Air Cargo, but I believe the net of that is down 23% for FedEx. We had 4 noise calls in March. It's been very active on the personnel report. We have a new operations specialist. Johan Jimenez is joining us in operations. Sean McMahon is joining us in maintenance as a maintenance specialist. Jeb Backus is rejoining us as our mechanic. And we are close to filling our seasonal employee register as well. So those are all good, really good items for us for this time of the year. Unfortunately, however, we did receive notice of resignation from Jamie Sansbury. We will miss her immensely, and we will have more word about a party for Jamie to see her off. And that concludes my manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Carver. Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Carver regarding his manager's report, or any of the items that he covered? Hearing none, we'll move on to commissioners' comments. Commissioners, anyone?
I
Ms.
am
Conlon?
sorry to hear that Jamie is leaving. She's an excellent bookkeeper, or whatever you want to call it. She's kept us in line for years. So I wish her luck, eh?
I think we all echo the sentiment of absolutely wishing Ms. Sansbury the very best in all future endeavors, and appreciate the dedication and efforts that she's put towards the airport.
Thank you very much.
It is, it's noticed. With that, we would turn to commissioners' comments. Commissioners, any individual comments? I have just a few. One, as I had asked a question, it occurred to me, I probably should have done a little of my own homework, and I think that perhaps on our agendas related to PFAS, maybe we should include just in parentheses the website ac-pfas.com. There is a study tab there that is an amazing, really document repository for, I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say millions of dollars worth of work that the airport has done, with tremendous amount of information. And you know, I think that for both the public and even us, and we have questions, there's a lot of information that can be found there. And the March 2024 comprehensive site assessment study really is a great, I think, update and sort of capture of information there. So I just mentioned that for the public and for the commissioners, and just, I think, really remembering that we have, we got one more item, Mr. Carberg, or?
No, just the PFAS investigation status table. Is that the document you're referring to include the website?
No, I was just saying the website itself. I'm sorry. Just as you know, on the agenda when we have PFAS updated, maybe if we just have, it just says www.act-pfas.com, and just a reminder that, you know, if people have questions, there's a tremendous amount. I mean, it's really, I think, like I said, it's a little bit dry of a website. It's not flash, you know, but if you really are interested in some of the studies and the documents, that study document tab has a tremendous amount of information there. And you know, the commission has done staff and consultants have done a tremendous amount of work. I just think that it's worth mentioning and highlighting that. Even as I had asked a question, I think that I was reminded that it was only just a couple of months ago. I know a lot has happened in these past few months, but that information is available there, and you know, perhaps may help answer some of the questions. With respect to tomorrow's open house, very much looking forward to that. We did not post it as a meeting. At the same time, it'd be great to see you all. I just want to remind everybody, for open meeting law compliance, we should not have group discussions or serial type meetings, but please, you know, I think it's gonna be very interesting, and there's going to be, as Mr. Carberg said, poster boards and ability, I think you said, a comment box and ways to inform the public, or even as commissioners, if, you know, things occur to you as part of the master planning process, as you're engaged there to give feedback to staff. You know, this is really the process that helps to set forth, you know, sort of the airport layout plan, you know, feeding into all of the planning work that the airport does. So I think I really encourage attendance and the public, and it'd be nice to see everybody. The other item I wanted to just report to everybody is that I attended a meeting today as a representative of the airport, or I was requested to, of the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee. And they had made a request to the chairs of several boards, the NPDC, the airport, the Zoning Board of Appeals, Sorry, I'm forgetting one other one, but just really to ask each sort of board as the so-called crack committee is working on resiliency and long-range planning for Nantucket, and that each board, commission, regulatory body, to what extent they're taking into account things related to coastal resiliency, sea level. I'll tell you in very brief, sort of my take on from the airport is that it's really that we do have waterfront land subject to erosion along our south shore. However, we also have generally speaking, high and dry land. We're not in flood zones and subject to inundation that some of the other areas, I think, for coastal. So I think it's really related to erosion, which, as we've all had discussions of for many years, is regularly monitored by airport staff as well as our consulting team. And I think really the recent fence relocation project that was essentially shovel ready when it needed to be was a perfect demonstration of keeping an eye on things and being ready. And I think that we've had some discussion that the master plan will also take into account that is an eroding shoreline. And I don't think we have infrastructure that I would call an imminent danger. But long-range planning is just a basic awareness. So just wanted to take a couple of minutes to cover that I had actually done that. And I think that covers the notes that I had. Does anybody else have anything further? With that, we will turn to public comment. Again, I will remind the public that the comments per Robert's rules will be limited to 3 minutes, and we will welcome that comment. Ms. Perry, I see you have your hand up. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate everything that the commission went over in this meeting. So thank you guys for doing that. And as been pointed out to me before, I'm quite late to the game on this one. So I've been trying to catch myself up on airports because it's not something that I'm well versed in. In doing so, I've kind of searched around the country for airports that are comparable to Nantucket just to see what they do for busy weekends. And one airport that caught my attention was the Augusta Regional Airport. They're kind of comparable to Nantucket, both in size, number of runways, aircrafts that come and go. And what they do, say for like the Masters weekend, they have the ability to park 160 jets on one of their runways while still keeping another runway active. And they actually cross that active runway, whether they're tugging planes back and forth or dropping passengers off. Their size is comparable, the number of aircrafts coming on a average monthly basis, and then on these peak weekends. So I didn't know, and again, I know I'm late to the game, but I didn't know if the commission or the airport manager or anybody has reached out to other airports comparable to Nantucket that has these high aircraft weekends. And I'm sorry, I don't know the terminology correctly, just to see what they do to troubleshoot these issues. And if it's something that maybe we could learn from them, because I was impressed that they're able to park 160 for that one weekend. And they have an enormous amount of planes that come and go for that weekend, the weekend leading up to it. Not just parking. And then they also use 2 airports that are in close proximity. So something that would be similar to Hyannis for overflow parking if jets don't want to park at Augusta. So that was just kind of my comment. And I was wondering if anybody's reached out to other airports or if that's, again, 20 years late to ask that question, but I figured I'd at least ask it. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Perry. Mr. Carberg.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I can't remember the manager's name at Augusta, but they're filing to expand their ramps as well. I think nationally the standard is dual use pavements can no longer exist. They're taking on the same sort of work that we are.
Thank you, Mr. Carberg. Any other comments? Ms. Perry?
Yes, thank you. I know it's funny. So you did reach out to them or didn't reach out to them or other airports? I understand the expansion process. They're not expanding into a residential area, so I just didn't know. It was just kind of a comment. I'm trying to be resourceful here, non-combative, and ask questions at meetings rather than being late to the meeting. So thank you.
I'll just say that I have had discussions with staff over the years, very similar to that, and I know that they have had some discussions. I know that I believe that Mr. Marks had raised a similar point around the Super Bowl, right? There are other airports facing shall we say surge loading at certain peak times. I know there's better terminology for that. And some of the other things that had come into play are private FBOs versus public, and there's a lot of factors that do come in, and it's certainly something that we've talked about and continue to try to manage. So, but thank you for that, and that is a good comparable. Anybody else from the public? Okay, seeing none. Thank you all tonight for coming. And I would entertain a motion to go into executive session per general law, chapter 30A, section 21A, to review the executive session minutes enumerated on the agenda for possible release, for review and possible release. To discuss strategy with respect to litigation regarding Walsh, where the chair has determined an open session may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the Airport Commission, and to discuss strategy with respect to potential litigation regarding Truro, where the chair determined an open session may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the Airport Commission not to return to open session. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second,
Ms. Topham, how do you vote?
aye.
Ms. Planzer?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. And again, thank you all, and perhaps we'll see you at the terminal tomorrow night. Thank you.
Thank you.